This here is another viewer's broken gaming PC. And rather than try to summarize what I think is wrong with this, I think it's best we start with the owner's description. In December, I went to install a module from Silverstone that would allow me to turn on my computer with a wireless remote. I tested it out on my bench connected to a different outlet, and it wouldn't power on with the remote or with the case's power button. The reason why I listed two motherboards is because I figured I fried the original and quickly ordered the updated version and waited until January to receive it, and it wouldn't turn on. I did find a stray component that I believe came from my original motherboard, but it's so small that I can't locate where it might have gone. Now, if you're curious about the system's specs, it does have an ASUS ROG B550F installed, although at this point, I believe it's the revised, so like the version 2 of this model, which shouldn't be a big deal either way. I don't really think it's a mistake. Honestly, it's probably a good thing to buy the second revision, and of course, it will natively support the 5800X in here as well. And again, the Silverstone wireless, I guess, remote that powers on his system. I've never even heard of this before. This essentially started the entire fiasco, is an ESO2, which you can see right here. Seeing as though I have no hands-on experience with this device, I can't really speak to whether it was the cause for what the system is doing currently. I believe it's not powering on. There should be like some RGB lights and things, something maybe like 5-volt power being sent to the board, but beyond that, I don't believe we get any reaction from the rig when we either jump the power pins or push the power button. It can be easy in these situations to think, man, if only I hadn't tried customizing, modifying anything, this system might still be working. Don't let that discourage you from making iterations. That's one of the joys of PC building. You can customize along the way. Nothing has to stay static. You can change even something as trivial as cable extensions, and that can radically transform the way your rig looks. Treat it like a piece of furniture. Take pride in it. Situations like these are few and far between. I can't necessarily point to the smoking gun yet because we do have a few variables to account for, including the motherboard swap, possibly the power supply. I'm really hoping the 7900 XT is not defective because that's probably the most expensive thing in here. But however you slice it, we're gonna give it our best shot and try to get this rig back up and running by the end of this video. I hope you will stay with me.
Are you sitting on a gaming PC without an activated copy of Windows? Forget $100+ retail keys, instead snag an OEM Windows 11 key for a fraction of the price to unlock the full potential of the OS. Oh, and don't worry, they'll still remove those pesky activation watermarks. Just click the links below to get started today, and be sure to use our special offer code SKGS for a sweet discount on a variety of options including Windows 11 Pro, Home, and more.
Hello there, and welcome to Fix or Flop, a playlist where we attempt to fix broken gaming PCs like this one for free. That means we don't charge for labor or replacement hardware if necessary, and that's thanks to your viewership. The fact that you click on these videos goes a long way for us. It allows us to sell things like ads that you see in videos, like the one you just saw, which pays on the back end. So because we can monetize there, we don't feel like it's necessary to monetize when it comes to these individual rigs and their owners. These folks are already gracious enough to drive out to drop their systems off and pick them back up again with no guarantee of a fix. The one thing I can guarantee though is that they won't be charged a dime from me. I will give you a brief insight into what I'm thinking before we attempt to power this on. And I hate to do that when a system supposedly doesn't react at all to power. It can be a bit risky, but I do need a baseline. I need to be able to see this in person. Every now and then someone will complain, oh Greg, why are you connecting this to power if you are being told that it has power issues? You could kill other stuff in the rig. But I don't know for a fact that it actually has power issues. I've been told things by owners before, and then when I plug these rigs in, I see completely different symptoms. Sometimes I don't see any symptoms at all, and I'm like, hey, I don't want to touch this because it actually works just fine. So I have to see that. I need at least one solid attempt at getting this rig to fire up. Assuming that it doesn't, however, I'm going to focus the majority of my efforts on two things. The motherboard, especially since we've found this like random small SMD that we cannot confirm either came from the new board or the old one. It could be that the board in here is the one missing the SMD. That would explain things fairly quickly. Or it could be the power supply. If the power supply has an internal short, if there's something wrong with the way things are wired, then it on its own could be keeping the rig from fully firing up in an effort to save the rig from further disaster. That's at least how things are supposed to work. Here goes nothing then. I'm gonna go ahead and flip the switch at the rear and see if we notice any LED. Okay, so we do have the LED over the rear I/O illuminated currently. So it is getting some level of power. I think that's just 5 volt. Let's give it a whirl. The power button. That is the power button, right? Yep. Okay. Nothing at all. No reaction. Let's try jumping the power pins themselves. A job which is proving easier said than done because it's fairly cramped down here, and I believe rear I/O would be somewhere near the bottom right side of this board, but I have no access because of these fans and this graphics card support. I really like compact builds, but this can be one of their downsides. The fact that I'm gonna have to remove some things in order to actually get to it means that this will not be an apples to apples jump. We will be removing a few variables here. I think I'm gonna try powering it on without the card installed at all. That'll at least tell us, assuming the rig doesn't react, that the card itself is not to blame. So out she comes very carefully. Wow, this is a tight fit. And here we go. So it does look like the power switch is wired correctly. I'm gonna go ahead and just slide this out and attempt to jump on my own. Well, yeah, this thing does not want to power on at all. We have to go deeper. I'm gonna check connections behind the motherboard tray. I've already checked that the 24 pin and the two 8-pin EPSs are fully seated. Maybe we find our smoking gun further back. I'm gonna slide out the entire power supply just so I can get a better look at all of his modular connections. Okay, so I do see something right away. I'm just gonna show you before I mess with it. I'm about 95% sure this cable is still making proper contact. The way the lighting is here, this angle is not great, but this cable is actually partially, you can see right there, yeah. So it's partially unseated. And depending again on how sensitive the tolerances are with the pins in here, as well as the pins in the unit itself, this might not be making proper contact and could very well keep the rig from powering on. I'm just gonna slide this all the way in. Let's see if we can hear an audible click. Oh, there we go. Yep, so that is how it should look. And I've already given a quick glance at the other cables back here. Everything else looks good and it's all where it should be. But I'm not too confident this is going to be our fix because this has been going on a good while. Yep, still nothing. Yeah, I mean, just the odds of that. It probably slipped out a little bit when the owner was swapping components, but the fact that the symptom kind of precedes all of that tells me that that likely isn't to blame, at least by itself. We've everything vital still connected here, and we're getting no reaction. Let's test this power supply with our inline tester just to be on the safe side. Just need to hold down this power button, and there we go. Unit is on, not hearing any beeps. Voltages are existent. It looks like even ripple is fine, at least under an idle situation. Timings look good as well. Also quickly just removed and visually inspected his DDR4 kit. You can see a lot of those SMDs on the bottom that like to crack when things aren't aligned properly with motherboard slots upon install. You do need to apply a bit of force to these, and so we've seen that go wrong with owners in person, actually, including in our Micro Center series. You can see along back things look good as well. So nothing broken, nothing missing on this front. What I'm going to try doing now is powering the system on without system RAM installed at all. The rig obviously won't post in its current state. Without RAM, you won't get anything on screen, but we're not going to get anything on screen anyway because we don't have the graphics card installed and there's no integrated graphics on a 5800X. That's not what we're looking for here. We're just looking for some other sign of life apart from just like 5-volt RGB power. The power supply is still out of the case because I imagine this is leading up to a motherboard swap. Let me go ahead and power it on. And this is with everything else non-vital disconnected. I've got a couple fans still installed, which shouldn't be affecting anything. And that's about it. Let's give it one more whirl. Nothing, really? I'm just going over everything here. I'm disconnecting power LEDs. I'm disconnecting HD audio. We don't have much else here. And we're still not getting any sign of life. That's not good. Yeah, this board is like cooked. I don't, either the board or the CPU, which, I mean, who knows? The CPU's been the common denominator throughout this platform upgrade or swap, sort of like a side grade. The replacement board doesn't seem to be cutting it. And so we could be looking at CPU damage. Just for giggles, let's verify CMOS battery voltage. Oh, what am I doing? That's an AC. This should give us a reading of somewhere between like 3.1 and 3.3. And there we go. Slightly low on the voltage for this being an otherwise new battery, but shouldn't be causing any power problems. These little guys can sometimes provide super helpful context clues in the event, let's say, the system experienced an extreme power surge and it wasn't surge protected. This might fry as a result of that, all that voltage basically running through a system unchecked. So the fact that this is healthy tells me that this might be isolated more to, again, either the board or the CPU. Seems inevitable then, this motherboard has to come out. Easy does it then. Pretty tight fit considering this 5 1/4 inch drive is in this case. I just think it's cool. You don't see that too often anymore. Do I have a cable? Oh, there's a cable snagged. There we go. To get a proper look at things, we have to remove the cooler. This is a larger Be Quiet. I think it's a Dark Rock Pro 3. I think it's a Pro 3. I don't remember if we're on Pro 4 now or Pro 5. But it is a chunky one, and it's covering, of course, our socket. So in order to take a closer look at the socket itself, the CPU, and a lot of the VRM MOSFET section of this board, it's going to need to come off as well. I've worked with this cooler so many times in the past, I can't believe I can't remember if it's a 3 or a 4. It is a Dark Rock Pro something. We're going to give it a little bit of a wiggle, break that thermal paste up, and there we are. Hello, 5800X. Quite a bit of paste on this. Things will get messy. Just comes with the territory. There is a bit of spillover on the underside of the CPU, but I don't see any bent or missing pins, and frankly, this isn't electrically conductive thermal paste. A little bit back here shouldn't be hurting things anyway, so at least visually, this looks okay. I don't want to forget these two M.2 drives. It looks like they're installed in here. Again, one of those was that A data drive, the other was a WD Blue. That looks like that's what this one is. Both of them are installed correctly, and since I don't expect these drives are the cause of our no power situation, I'm gonna go ahead and test these off camera just to be sure. And in case you're wondering, because we have seen it before, this chassis does have its standoffs in its correct locations for an ATX motherboard. There's nothing back here that could have shorted against it. Now this is that small component that broke off of one of the two boards. I'm thankful that the owner gave this to us, so at least know what it looks like and can sort of like compare the different pad sizes on the board, what could possibly be the spot where this broke off, and if so, on which board. I actually have both boards here as well. This is the original, closer to the camera, and this is the one that we were working with since the beginning in the system. I can tell you, I've already found the culprit. So if you notice right here on the replaced board, the one we've been working with since the start of this video, you can see that little SMD to the right of my thumb. On the original board, which is, oh, sorry, we gotta be up here, that SMD is missing. And you can see, or it looks like it was sort of broken off. Actually, the lighting is pretty rough. There we go. Yeah, so it's missing there. And yeah, I'm trying to be apples to apples here. Yep, and it's not missing there. So the old board, I believe, was the one where that SMD broke off. But that only adds confusion to this entire ordeal. If the old board is the one that suffered physical damage, why didn't the replacement, almost identical unit, not fix the problem? As much as it pains me to say this, I think our common denominator is this 5800X. The fact that this wasn't working in the old board and then was migrated to the new board with the identical symptoms, it's very likely this is to blame. So to follow that hunch, I'm gonna take his original board. Now when I say original, I mean the one that was in the case when we started this video, not the old one that has the physical damage. I'm no longer going to address this, at least in this video, because I don't want to create any more confusion. I'm gonna take this board and throw in one of my own working Ryzen CPUs. And really, this being a B550 board, almost every Ryzen generation up until Zen 4, which swapped over to, right, that would have been the LGA layout, should work with this particular unit. So let's see if we can find something similar, toss it in, we'll plug a power supply to it and maybe some RAM, maybe his original kit. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. See if it powers on. If it doesn't, then I'm going to be at a complete loss. Let's give this Ryzen 7 3700X a shot. Got his kit of RAM already installed. I know I said I'd mention this earlier. He is running a 32 gig kit, so each DIMM is actually 16 gigs, which is nice and goes for a pretty penny in today's market. Just going to raw dog it with no CPU cooler or anything else attached. As long as it powers on, and we can see if it does via the debug LEDs near the 24 pin. That's all I'm really worried about. That'll take take us quite a bit further along than we were getting before. Here we go. Wow. Yeah, this thing is still not powering on. It's just completely dead. I guess the CPU is fine, unless it's also dead. It also isn't powering on without his DRAM installed, by the way, in case you were wondering, and it should at the very least do that. The only variable left is the motherboard. I mean, I know my CPU works. I've used this in several builds. There's nothing else it could be. It's just strange because I don't see any physical signs of damage. There are no like shorted out or crisscrossed pins inside any of these USB ports or anything. I've checked the back of the board. Everything top and bottom looks good. I mean, the only other thing I can do is start stripping back like the chipset heatsink, the rear I/O cover. I don't think any of that is going to change the conclusion. However, this board needs to be replaced. Again. In comes a unit from my own stash, a Gigabyte B550 Gaming XV2. I purchased several of these for the Fix or Flop playlist a few months ago, and while this isn't the beefiest board, I wouldn't even really say it's a side grade. I think feature-wise it's probably a slight downgrade. It is at least a free board for the owner, and it should hopefully get them back up and running again. So here we have that replacement board along with a fan, sort of a visual indicator. If the system powers on, that should tell you. I have his original kit of RAM in here, his 5800X, and his original power supply all wired up. I don't suspect any of these are bad. That's why they're here. This will be a sort of a shortcut to getting the system back up and running faster. I'm gonna go ahead and power on the unit, and now we just need to jump these two pins. What? That should have worked. What's going on here? Those are the power pins. They are being jumped, but nothing's happening. Alrighty, well, I thought I knew what I was doing. Nothing's happening with my CPU either. Is his power supply actually just garbage? Like, is it dead? And my inline tester just didn't catch it? Maybe because there's like a small power spike when the system first turns on. Like that immediately trips something in here. I have no idea why else we would be having problems. These are the correct cables for this unit, right? They look correct. The only thing we had was an extension running to the graphics card, but this shouldn't be a problem either. These are fairly universal. So what the heck is going on? Everything's still plugged in. Yeah, there's something terribly wrong with this power supply. And I missed it. My inline tester missed it. This thing is no good. I wonder then if his replacement motherboard is actually okay. Oh, I thought we ruled things out, and here I go, unrolling them. No time for games anymore. 24 pin is installed, 8 pin up top for a replacement power supply. This is one that we've used several times in the playlist before. This is really it. This is for all the beans. If this also doesn't work, like what on, that means that this power supply or the original board is like killing other components, like it's killing my CPU. I mean, I don't know how else to chalk this up. No, my breaker is not tripped. That outlet is still hot. So here we go, power on at the unit. Let's try here, and there we go. That's a spinning fan, and the chip is getting hot. Yeah, we've got a bad power supply. So now what I've done, I've taken my replacement power supply, the one from my stash that we've just confirmed works, and I've connected it to his original motherboard, as well as his original kit of DDR4, both DIMMs, as well as his original 5800X. We've still got our little fan indicator here. Let's see if for the first time since this PC arrived, we can get power through this board. I'm gonna flip the switch at the rear and give it a whirl. Nothing? Really, nothing? All right, well, guess I was a little too zealous there. How? Multiple problems. That's what this is, multiple problems. Dead board, dead power supply. Power supply probably killed the board, is what I would wager. I don't really see this working in reverse, although I'm sure it has happened. I don't know how else to explain this, and I'm getting very frustrated with the inconsistencies in this one. When you have multiple issues with a rig, it becomes 10 times harder to troubleshoot, 9 times out of 10. The final test then is with my replacement board, his original CPU, his original kit of RAM, my replacement power supply. So those are the two things I suspect being ruled out, right? His motherboard and his PSU. I'm gonna go ahead and flip this switch. Doing this one-handed is kind of cringe. And there we go. We've got power through that fan. That's already a lot further along than we've ever gotten any other combination of components. What a headache. We're in a poorly lit closet because this is where I decided to put my whiteboard for some reason, but I just want to give you a visual representation of what we've just done. So we have our start. This is when we attempt to power on. If we go through his motherboard, his CPU, and his power supply, we get a fail. No power, no post, nothing. If we go through my motherboard, his CPU, and his power supply, we still get a fail after bypassing his board. If we go through my motherboard, my CPU, my power supply, of course we get a pass. These are all known working components from my own stash, so that's sort of our control. But then if we go through my motherboard, his CPU, my power supply, we also get a pass. So that's the eureka moment, right? That tells me that both his power supply and his motherboard are to blame, because even in the instance where we bypassed his board but still used his power supply, we ended up with a fail. The only scenario where we're able to use any of his components with any of ours is when we pull his CPU over. As long as his power supply and motherboard aren't involved in the equation, we get a pass. By the way, that little flowchart didn't include RAM because I only stuck with his kit the entire time. I figured since it would be super fast to swap out, if I noticed that I was having issues with his, then I could quickly introduce my own set, but I never had to because we were able to get the system to power on with his, again, in certain configurations. So it's nice knowing that I don't really have to replace another kit of DDR4 or 5 in today's market. That really hurts the wallet. We will be inevitably replacing his motherboard. The other thing we have to swap in is, of course, a power supply. And I think you know where this is headed. This here is a Be Quiet Pure Power 12M. This is an 850 watt example, 80 plus gold certified. It's fully modular. This is one of the best, I think, bang for the buck power supplies you can buy today. They actually have, I think, the 13mm out as well if you want something a bit newer. These come with fantastic warranties. I use Be Quiet power supplies in my own rigs. I have done so for years, even long before they ever supported us in this playlist. But it's just super cool being partnered with a brand that's willing to send gear like this to help out other folks in this playlist. It really is a fantastic fit. In situations like these where it's obvious the power supply is to blame, Be Quiet comes in clutch. I suppose in a weird sort of way anyway, it makes sense to pair a Be Quiet power supply with a build that already has a Be Quiet cooler. Of course, you can find this product and many others linked in the video description from the brand. I want to give them, again, a huge shout. Be sure to show them some love. It helps them out, helps us out, and keeps videos like these churning. Now, I don't always do this next part, but because we've had to change so much to this system and because we have multiple issues, I want to be super sure that this rig posts before I throw everything into the case, because if I have to take it all back out, it's just going to be a huge hassle. You're going to be able to see when the system turns on by way of the graphics card fans. So I think it's all hooked up now. It's an absolute disaster here. I'm just going to come around to the front and jump these power pins. Here we go. All right, so it's on. Graphics card fans aren't spinning right now. That's kind of weird. There they go. They should at least turn on for, you know, a few seconds, and then they'll likely turn back off because they aren't under any load. The GPU itself doesn't get hot at idle, and so yeah, it's a way for the card to be a little quieter. Now I'm just gonna sit here, totally unscripted, with the camera rolling, in hopes that this post, oh, there it is, there it is. Look at that, the double deuce. 2 problems with this system, and we're back up and running. That gives me a ton of confidence moving forward. I think it's safe to say we can now throw our replacement board and replacement power supply back into this case with all other original components and try for one final post. We might even take an extra minute or two to fully dissect and strip the original board just to see in the off chance if there's any like physical damage around VRM MOSFET area. It's where I'm expecting things to look bad if they do. Otherwise, there's not much more I'm going to be able to offer service-wise in this video. My skill set is very limited on the board, like, you know, repair side of it. So I'm going to defer to experts. I'm going to give both of the original boards back to the owner, and he can do with them what he pleases. In fact, he might even be able to return the board that came with the case to start with, because that was the replacement. And it sounds like he didn't order that too long ago. From the swap, we also don't want to forget other important gears. We're going to need his mounting hardware for the Be Quiet Dark Rock Pro. We're going to pull that from his old board. We're also going to have to install his 2 M.2 drives. There's number 1, and there's number 2. Now we can very carefully drop everything in. There are several cables still in here, so I want to make sure that I'm not snagging any of those or getting them trapped behind the board. Always a risk when doing a swap like this. I think that right there should do it. That's the last screw. Now on to other goodies. A lot of front panel stuff is already wired, but I am kind of annoyed by the fact that the stickers on these fans aren't lined up. So like one of them's facing toward the front, the other facing toward the right side. Really, it's the back from your perspective. And so I'm going to take this chance to remove one of these and orient them in a way that's a little more suitable to my OCD. And then I'm also going to take that chance to further route and connect front cables, because the clearance here is just not that great for anything. Okay, I actually turned both of them to face the left side, so it's actually legible. I know these stickers are kind of ugly, nobody really cares, but this way they're at least uniform, and it actually gives me a bit more slack to connect these cables to the case's fan hub. Now we can carefully slide in our power supply. We'll get this wired up. Now we can install the graphics card and hopefully have everything wrapped up. It's a little finicky with this little support bracket. I think it's cool because it bolts right to the card, so it's super sturdy. It's just kind of frustrating to work with at the onset. So there we go. And now we kind of have to hold this in place when we bolt everything down. One more ARGB cable connected up top, and I believe that should do it. This is it. This is for all the marbles. Everything reconnected that we expect still works, along with our replacement hardware. Again, 2 things in this case, literally. Here we go. Power on at the rear, power up front. All right, so already off to a fantastic start. The system actually powers on. And let's give it a few, it's probably gonna take 30 to 60 seconds for this to power on for the first time, to post, I should say. It's likely gonna train memory, and maybe search for a boot drive. Oh, okay, it already fired up. That's fast. There's one fan in here, a couple fans in here that are super loud. Those can be adjusted in the BIOS, I hope. So let's quickly plow through this and hope that we load into Windows. That's really where I'd like to end this. If we see Windows pop up, then I know that the owner's gonna be in good hands once he, that's weird. Once he, yeah, there we go, okay. Once he gets the system back, you know, plugged into his place. That's what I'm really after here. I just want these to be as turnkey as possible for their owners. In 99% of circumstances, that's really the best outcome. And it looks like, judging by, yep, that's normal because we've swapped motherboards. It's gonna have to reconfigure a few different drivers, but those Windows squiggly circles are looking pretty enticing. And would you look at that, our familiar Windows home screen. This is a sight to behold, especially after dealing with a multi-issue system. It's so nice to end on a high note. I'm sure you can hear from where you're sitting just how loud a couple of these fans are. It's the 2 atop the power supply. For some reason, those are just whirring. It looks like, yeah, the board thinks they're running at a very low RPM, but because the fans installed are not PWM, it's sending pulses of voltage down 1 pin, but those fans obviously can't detect that. So by default, I think they're running at full speed. Something like this is what I try to aim for. You know what it is? This fan hub, this case, doesn't connect directly to the motherboard via fan header. So I'm only getting power to it from this SATA power cable, and then we have a separate feed for the RGB, but that's it. There's no way to control the RPM of these fans. At least the ones connected to the hub, and I don't have this many available fan headers on this motherboard to plug them all in directly. I have to go through the hub, unfortunately. It's kind of a crappy design, but there's not much I can do about it. But I suppose the important thing is that the rig at least powers on and does consistently at this point load into Windows. We can deal with the sound issue at a later date. I think that's kind of just a byproduct of the fan hub itself, and that's a cheap replacement if you wanted to just run like a $20 or $30 one that actually connects to your motherboard. Heck, you can even buy them cheaper than that, like $10 or so on Amazon. I think that's the best bet for a long-term solution there. There is one more unknown, and that's the original board to the case. I want to take it apart just a bit further and see if we notice any burn marks or anything. I would be pretty surprised if we did, just going on precedent. Unfortunately, a lot of this stuff tends to go under the radar. If you do have, you know, a shorted MOSFET or something, I mean, you could tell by looking through like a thermal camera, or I've seen people use like, you know, a shot of, I don't know if it's like CO2 or liquid nitrogen or whatever, but they'll super cool components, and then whichever one heats up super fast, that there could be your short. Unfortunately, I just don't have the tooling or the know-how to really get this extensive into board repair. I'd rather defer to the experts. One thing that I know how to do very quickly is just swap parts, which is a part of troubleshooting and fixing. I know we get accused of, you know, skipping the fixing part by just swapping broken parts for new ones, but that is actually a lot of what repair folks do. My dad's an engineer, and whenever he sees a bad part, oftentimes it's more economically viable to just replace the part instead of you know, focus on board level stuff. Now there's still obviously a market for this, but it's not my market. I'd like to get these rigs back up and running as quickly as possible. I frankly don't have time to experiment with owners' hardware at their own expense. And by expense, I mean I just don't have a lot of time to spend with their hardware. I want to get these rigs back into their hands as quickly as possible and hopefully in working order. All of these covers and heat spreaders should now come up. Let me remove this little RGB cable. And then let's see, chipset heatsink, which is usually just cooled by a thin layer of, okay, well they didn't use a pad, well they used a pad I should say, they didn't use paste. So that makes it actually a little easier to reinstall. We should have pads over these as well. And there you are. That is the entire front side of this motherboard exposed, more or less. And I don't see anything that stands out. If you do, just scream at me in the comments section. At the end of the day though, I don't really think this is gonna matter. This being a relatively new replacement board, I think the owner's just gonna try his luck at returning it to get his money back. I did just speak with the owner, and he is a happy camper, let me tell you. He's a bit confused by this series of unfortunate events, but he's elated that the rig now works again. I hope this doesn't discourage him from wanting to work on his rig in the future. I do think this was largely just a fluke thing. I don't see any signs of abuse on the replacement board. I don't think he did anything wrong there. And as far as I'm aware, I don't even believe that Silverstone, like random remote boot up thing that he was going to attach to his rig was even involved by the time the replacement motherboard came in. So I think something had happened to the power supply, possibly when that Silverstone little component was first introduced. Now, and then that carried over to the replacement Asus board. It's possible that unit might have killed that board as well. I don't see how else that could have happened unless he just received a dead on arrival part. But you know, you can't always pinpoint exactly what caused things, especially when multiple issues are involved. All that you can really look toward in the end is, again, getting that rig up and running, getting it to power on, getting it to post, load into Windows, as this one does repeatedly. I'd say this is mission accomplished. Thank you again so much for continuing to support these videos by clicking on them. It is a huge help. I love that we can make a small impact here in the Central Florida area. And if you or someone you know has a broken PC like this one once was, and you'd like a chance to have it fixed for free, be sure to submit a form. It is linked in every Fix or Flop video description. There you can include a description of your issue, some photos, a spec list, and we'll be sure to get back to you as soon as possible. Again, thanks for the love. Thank you for the support. Be sure to stick around for the next. My name is Greg. Thanks for learning with me.